Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video on my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on the Julia programming language as I've acquired over the last 7 or so days, both 10 days of me using the language. And I'm going to talk about what I like about it, what I don't really like about it, and just how I think it's best to be used. First of all, if you don't know me, I'm Sid, and also if you want to skip right to the meat of this video, I have timestamps in the description if you don't want to hear this introduction spiel. I'm Sid. I'm a senior in high school who's really interested in computer science and data science, and I'm embarked on a 66 days of data journey, which is essentially just learning data science concepts every day for 66 days in a row. I haven't uploaded a 66 days of data video in a while because I realized that not every day is learning something that's like super exciting, and keeping it to around a weekly or every few days of a video will make the videos a little bit more interesting, at least in my opinion. If you have suggestions on that, then leave a comment down below. Alright, let's get straight into the meat of the video. Let's start by talking about the pros that Julia has. Julia has a lot of pros as a programming language, and I really enjoy programming in it. First of all, the first thing that I appreciate is that it's very fast. It's almost as fast as C, which if you're coming from Python, you'll appreciate because sometimes Python does end up being really slow, even if your code is very optimized. Even if it's like O of n, Python might just decide to have uh, hard time running your code very quickly, and Julia's quite a bit faster, and I appreciate that a lot. Julia also has a great REPL, or read, evaluate, and print loop, which both complete functions as types, as well as using your previous command history to complete statements. It's really good in the terminal, and there's just a lot of support around it, and the REPL makes it really nice to use when you're doing interactive things. There's also strong dynamic typing, which I appreciate a lot because it's dynamic, it's high level, and it doesn't isolate the user from thinking about types, which Python kind of does because you never have to think about types in Python. You kind of just like, okay, and then it's done, and you don't think about it. In Julia, it's still very high level, but you encourage to think about the types of data you're using. Their n-dimensional arrays are very powerful. It's really basically the same thing as a NumPy array, and these are just built into the language, and they're really powerful and really cool. I like the fact that you can function overload in Julia, which is awesome. And other things that are really cool include the fact that the code is high level, so it's easy to understand for somebody who doesn't really look at code a lot. And I appreciate that. It's also very easy to learn if you're coming from Python or even just a beginner in programming. The syntax is very simple for a beginner to learn, but there's also a lot more for people to dig into in the basics of the language. Well, in the foundational level of the language. There's also a lot of Julia that's written in Julia. So if you look into the documentation of Julia, you'll be able to see down to a fairly low level what's happening, and all the code is written in Julia, so you'll be able to understand it. This is pretty similar to Swift, I think. I don't remember too much about Swift, but Swift also has a lot of Swift written in Swift, where everything is like where everything in Swift is from a library written in Swift, and everything is just like an import from a library. I think in Swift, even the data types are not like built in, but they're a library, which is really cool. Cons of Julia, the few that I have to think about right now are pretty easily solvable, and they're not like an inherent flaw in the language. It's just related to the community around it. First of all, the community around Julia is wonderful. It's very active, and there's a lot of people that are willing to help you out with learning things, which is awesome. But the Julia community as of right now is still pretty small compared to communities based around like Python or JavaScript or something. And if you have, and it's fairly likely that if you end up with you'll end up with some sort of problem that you can't just like Stack Overflow super easily at first, but then you could be the person that'll Stack Overflow for somebody else in the future. And I think it's a con, but it's also like something that's very nice because you get to be at the front of something new that's really cool. But most of your answers, especially at the beginning, you can find the answers to them very easily because the forums based around the language are very active. That's what I have to think about on the pros and cons of Julia. and I'll talk a little bit more about other things, just random various thoughts I have about the language. So, just a general other thought, Julia has support for something called metaprogramming, which is editing Julia code in Julia itself. It's super cool. It's not something I have a really great grasp of yet, so I can't really talk about it too much, but it's something that I'm finding cool, and I'm definitely learning something new by looking at it. And I think it's a good feature. I've heard other people say it's a good feature of the language, so I'm putting that under a tentative pro, but I don't know anything about that, so I'm not going to really say anything about that. In other news, you should also try learning Julia, especially if you already know Python and R and you're getting a little bored doing NumPy. Import NumPy as NP and import matplotlib. Pyplot is PLT and import pandas as PD. If you're getting a little bored, do that. Then try Julia for a bit. There's a lot of cool things you can do. I did a physics assignment in Julia a week ago, and that was just really fun. I think that's my last video on this channel, actually. I'll pop it up somewhere here, and you can go click on it and watch that. It's not that great of a video, but hey, you have time. Also, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, dropping a comment and a like, maybe even joining my email newsletter and Discord. Maybe follow me on Twitter if you're really adventurous. And I'll be posting longer, in-depth videos on data science topics starting very shortly. I'm still figuring out how to properly animate decision trees, so that's a good explanation. And that should be coming out sometime in the next week. I'm not going to be very ambitious here, but I'm going to make an animated explainer about decision trees, and that'll be coming out in a week. Again, if you enjoyed the video, subscribe, comment, leave suggestions. I'm trying to get good at this YouTube thing. And I'll see you guys soon enough.